The morning horn echoed through the Galactic Military Academy, its sharp note piercing the thin artificial atmosphere. Jake Sullivan dragged himself out of his cramped sleeping pod and rubbed his eyes. Another day of mockery awaited him. "Look at the tiny human," hissed Zornak, the tall Vectoran cadet with 4 muscular arms and purple scales. "Still here, even though everyone knows you don't belong." Jake kept his head down as he walked past the common area. The academy housed dozens of alien species, each one naturally stronger, faster, or smarter than humans. At least that's what they all believed. The Gravorians towered at 3 meters tall with stone-like skin. The crystalline prisms could refract, laser fire. The liquid-formed Aquarians could slip through any gap. Next to them, Jake's 1.8-meter frame seemed laughably weak. "Sullivan," barked Commander Corix from across the training hall. The Draconian's scaled face twisted into a sneer. "If you're done admiring your betters, perhaps you'd like to join today's combat simulation." The other cadets chuckled. Combat. Simulations were supposed to prepare them for real galactic threats, but for Jake, they were public humiliation sessions. The holoroom could simulate any environment, and Corix always chose scenarios that highlighted human disadvantages. Today's simulation, close quarters combat in a narrow corridor. Jake would face Prism, whose crystalline body could deflect any strike while delivering crushing blows. "Begin," Corix commanded. The simulation activated. Jake found himself in a metal hallway barely 2 meters wide. Prism materialized opposite him, reflecting the harsh overhead lights in dazzling patterns. "This will be quick," Prism said in their melodic voice. They rushed forward, razor-sharp crystalline edges extended. Jake stepped sideways at the last moment. Prism crashed into the wall behind him, sending sparks flying. Before Prism could recover, Jake grabbed a loose pipe from the damaged wall and swung it like a bat. The pipe shattered on impact, but the force knocked Prism off balance. "Using debris as a weapon?" Corix scoffed. "Primitive human tactics." But Jake wasn't finished. He picked up a larger piece of metal and jammed it between the wall panels, creating a wedge. When Prism charged again, Jake used the wedge as leverage to vault over the crystalline being. He landed behind Prism and swept their legs out from under them using his own body weight. Prism crashed to the ground. The simulation ended. "A lucky strike," Corix dismissed. "Humans rely on tricks because they lack true strength." After training, Jake retreated to his quarters. He pulled out his secret training program on his personal tablet. While others slept, Jake studied every alien fighting style he could access. He learned how Vectorans use their multiple arms for simultaneous strikes. He studied Gravorian pressure, point locations. He memorized Aquarian fluid dynamics. "You're wasting your time," said Lisa Carter, his only human friend at the academy. She stopped by his quarters with dinner rations. "They'll never see us as equals." "Maybe not," Jake replied, "but that doesn't mean I'll stop trying." That night, after Lisa left, Jake received an academy-wide announcement. The annual interspecies combat tournament would be held in 2 weeks. Every species could enter one champion to compete in solo combat scenarios. The winner would receive immediate officer status and their choice of assignment. Jake's heart raced. This was his chance to prove humans belonged among the galaxy's finest warriors. Tomorrow, he would ask Commander Corix for permission to enter. He knew he'd be rejected, but he had to try. He had to show them that humans could compete with anyone. Outside his window, stars twinkled against the void of space. Somewhere, among those distant suns, Earth waited. Jake clenched his fists. He would make humanity proud, no matter what it took. Jake stood outside Commander Corix's office, his hand hovering over the entry pad. He had practiced this conversation 100 times, but his heart still pounded against his chest. Today was the last day to register for the tournament. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Corix sat behind his massive desk, reviewing cadet performance reports on holographic displays. His reptilian eyes narrowed when he saw Jake. "What do you want, Sullivan?" Corix asked, not bothering to hide his irritation. "Permission to enter the combat tournament, sir," Jake said, keeping his voice steady. Corix's laugh echoed through, The office. You can't be serious. The tournament is for real warriors, not novelty acts. I've met all the physical requirements, sir, Jake pressed. The academy rules state any cadet can. The rules also state I can deny entry for the safety of participants. Corix interrupted. You'd be crushed in the first round. Jake had expected this. He pulled out his tablet and showed Corix his training scores. My agility tests rank in the top 10%. My tactical scores are even higher. I've beaten Prism in 3 simulations this week. Corix studied the data, his forked tongue flicking with skepticism. Around the office, various alien cadets had gathered at the open door drawn by the commotion. Zornak pushed through the crowd. Did the human say he wants to compete? The Vectoran laughed, his forearms flexing with amusement. I'll place a wager right now. 1,000 credits that the human doesn't survive the first round. Other cadets joined in, shouting bets and jokes. Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he stood his ground. Commander Vex, a senior instructor with tentacle-like appendages, slithered to the doorway. Commander Corix, perhaps we should let him participate. The entertainment value alone would be worth it. Corix drummed his clawed fingers on the desk. The betting pool had grown rapidly, and Jake could see the wheels turning in the commander's mind. A spectacle like this would draw more viewers to the tournament. Fine, Corix finally said. You may enter as Earth's representative. But when you fail, I want a full report on why humans are unfit for combat roles. I'll need that in writing, sir, Jake said quickly. Registration requires official approval. Corix growled, but composed the approval document. As the holographic form materialized, he added a stipulation. You will use only basic combat equipment, no advanced technology to give you an artificial advantage. Agreed, sir. Jake left the office with the approval chip clutched in his hand. He had done it. He was in the tournament. The corridor buzzed with activity as news spread. Some cadets laughed at his audacity. Others placed more bets. A few, like Lisa, looked concerned. You're insane, Lisa said, falling into step beside him. The tournament nearly killed a Gravorian 3 years ago. They're built like tanks. I have to try, Jake replied. This is bigger than just me. It's about showing what humans can do. That evening, Jake reported to the tournament briefing room, Archivist Tan, an ancient being with metallic skin and glowing eyes, explained the rules through a holographic display. 5 rounds of solo combat. Each round increases in difficulty. Competitors receive only basic armor and weapons. The environments change randomly. Victory requires survival and combat effectiveness. The hologram showed previous champions. A massive Krillian warrior with bone protrusions, a shape-shifting morph, an energy-based being called a Lux. None looked anything like a human. Round 1 begins in 3 days. Tan continued. Prepare. Accordingly, as Jake left the briefing, he overheard several alien cadets discussing their training strategies. The Vectorans planned to rely on their natural four-armed advantage. The Aquarians would use their shape-shifting abilities. Each species had biological advantages humans lacked. But Jake had something else. He had studied them all. He knew their strengths, their weaknesses, their predictable patterns. Most importantly, he had the human capacity for adaptation. While they trained in their specialized techniques, Jake would prepare for anything. That night, alone in the training room, Jake began his final preparations. He practiced scenarios he'd never encountered before. He pushed his body beyond what anyone thought possible for a human. He had 3 days to prove that Earth deserved respect among the stars. 3 days to change everything. The tournament arena buzzed with energy as thousands of beings filled the stadium seats. Jake stood in the competitor waiting area, basic combat armor strapped to his body. His standard-issue plasma blade felt light in his hand compared to the massive weapons other competitors carried. Zornak strutted past, all forearms flexing. Enjoy the show while it lasts, human. This first round alone will crush your weak bones. Through the transparent viewing screen, Jake watched the massive Gravorian champion demonstrate his strength by lifting a 3-ton boulder with ease. The crowd roared. Prism arrived next, their crystalline body reflecting the arena lights in a dazzling display. They could deflect energy weapons with their natural armor. Competitors, attention, announced the arena's system. Round 1 will begin in a high-gravity environment similar to Graviton Prime. Gravity will be set to 3 times Earth standard. Competitors must defeat automated combat drones while completing the course. Jake's stomach dropped. High gravity. Earth's gravity was already considered weak by galactic standards. Triple that would be crushing for him. The transport beam activated, and Jake materialized in a rocky canyon environment. His legs immediately buckled under the extreme gravity. Other competitors built for strength moved normally. Some even laughed at his struggle. Begin, the announcer's voice echoed. Jake gritted his teeth. Each step felt like lifting mountains. Around him, Gravorians and other powerful species charged forward, smashing combat drones with ease. Zornak used 3 arms to attack while balancing with his 4th. But Jake noticed something. The drones were programmed for standard combat patterns. They expected competitors to face them directly. In this gravity, everyone moved slower, including the drones. Jake picked up a small rock that felt like a brick in his hand. He tested its weight. Under triple gravity, everything had more mass. More momentum. He remembered his physics lessons from Earth. A drone swooped toward him. Instead of attacking directly, Jake threw the rock with all his strength. The increased gravity multiplied its impact force. The rock struck the drone's sensor array, disabling it instantly. The drone crashed into the canyon wall. Other competitors paused, watching. Commander Korix leaned forward in the viewing box, surprise evident on his reptilian features. Jake continued throwing rocks, using the high gravity to his advantage. Each projectile became a deadly weapon. He moved strategically, using the canyon walls for cover. While others fought drones head-on, Jake turned the environment itself into his ally. He reached the first checkpoint barely 5 minutes into the round. Most competitors were still fighting their way through waves of drones. In the viewing area, aliens exchanged worried glances. The betting odds began to shift. At the second checkpoint, Jake found a narrow ledge. Most competitors couldn't fit through it due to their size. Jake squeezed through, emerging on the other side of a drone formation. He picked up larger rocks now, hurling them with deadly accuracy. Clever, muttered Vecton Commander Grix in the viewing box, using the gravity against the drones. We never trained for unconventional tactics. In the arena, Jake reached the final checkpoint. The course timer showed 12 minutes, faster than the standard completion time for this stage. The massive Gravorian, despite his immense strength, was still fighting through the middle section. Zornak had completed his course, but not nearly as efficiently. The gravity challenge ended. Jake stood at the finish line, covered in dust and sweat, but victorious. He had finished 3rd among all competitors, a human, outperforming species, considered physically superior. The arena fell silent. Then slowly applause began. Not mocking this time, but genuine recognition. In the competitor area, Jake caught Zornak's eye. The Vectoran's confidence had cracked. For the first time, doubt clouded his features. Interesting performance, Commander Korix admitted to his fellow instructors. The human adapted to the environment, rather than fighting against it. Lisa. Carter jumped up in the spectator section, cheering loudly. Other human spectators, initially doubtful, now looked at Jake with hope and pride. The arena announcer's voice boomed. Impressive strategy from Earth's representative. Round 1 complete. Prepare for round 2. Jake removed his helmet, catching his breath. He had survived. More than that, he had shown the galaxy something they hadn't expected from a human. But this was only the beginning. 4 rounds remained, and they would only get harder. Around him, the conversation among alien competitors had changed. They no longer dismissed him as weak. Now they saw him as competition. Jake gripped his plasma blade tighter. He had their attention now. It was time to earn their respect. Round 2 began in a dense jungle environment. Jake materialized among thick vines and towering trees. The humidity hit him immediately, and he struggled to breathe in the thick air. Around him, other competitors appeared with flashes of light. "Attention, competitors," the arena system announced. "You must survive against hunter-killer drones while traversing the jungle. The drones have thermal vision and advanced tracking systems. Time limit, 30 minutes. Almost immediately, red laser lights swept through the trees. The drones appeared like metallic wasps, each the size of a small vehicle. Their scanning lights painted threat patterns across the jungle floor. Zornak immediately started blasting drones with his plasma weapons. His forearms gave him constant firing capability. A Krillian warrior with bone armor charged through the undergrowth, ignoring the drone's attacks. The projectiles bounced off his natural plating. Jake watched the drone circle overhead. His Earth military training kicked in. These weren't mindless machines. They had search patterns, weak points, predictable hunting algorithms. While others fought directly, Jake slipped between thick ferns. He remembered his survival training from Earth. The drones had thermal vision, but the jungle offered many heat signatures. Animals scattered through the foliage. Steam vents released warm air pockets. Jake grabbed handfuls of mud and smeared it across his armor. The cool earth would mask his heat signature. He moved like a ghost through the trees, remembering techniques from Earth's special forces. A drone swept past him, its sensors confused by multiple heat sources. Jake noted its patrol pattern. He gathered thick vines and wove them together, creating a net. When the drone returned on its predictable path, Jake threw the vine net over it. The drone's rotors tangled in vegetation. It crashed to the ground. In the viewing area, instructors leaned forward with interest. "Primitive but effective," muttered Instructor Zen, a slug-like being. "The human understands camouflage." Jake continued using unconventional tactics. He found fallen leaves and scattered them above his position. When drones flew over, their downward cameras only saw leaves floating in thermal updrafts. He used mud to patch his armor's heat signatures. He even created false heat trails by heating rocks and placing them in different locations, confusing the drone's tracking systems. While Zornak destroyed 20 drones through brute force, Jake disabled 15 without firing a single shot. He moved faster through the jungle than anyone expected, using Earth's guerrilla tactics that the advanced alien technology couldn't predict. At one point, Jake encountered a squad of 3 drones hunting in formation. He quickly scooped handfuls of bioluminescent insects common to the environment. As the drones approached, he threw the glowing bugs into the air. The drones' threat assessment systems mistook the chaotic light patterns for energy weapons fire. They scattered to avoid an attack that didn't exist. Commander Korik stood up in his viewing box. "This is impossible. Earth has no advanced military technology. How is he?" "He's not using technology," interrupted Elder Voss, a wise ancient being. "He's using knowledge, pure tactical thinking." The round timer showed 10 minutes remaining. Most competitors were exhausted from direct combat. Some had been disabled by overwhelming drone swarms. Jake had reached the extraction point with minimal damage to his armor. He camouflaged himself near the finish zone and disabled 2 more drones that tried to prevent others from completing the course. When time ran out, Jake had eliminated 17 drones without using lethal force, showing tactical efficiency that impressed even his harshest critics. The extraction beam pulled him from the jungle. He emerged covered in mud and leaves, looking primitive compared to the high-tech warriors around him, but his performance spoke louder than appearance. "Unorthodox," pronounced Judge Krell, "a being made of pure energy, but remarkably effective." The human demonstrated superior battlefield awareness. In the waiting area, competitors looked at Jake differently. Respect replaced mockery. Even Zornak acknowledged his success with a nod, grudging but genuine. Lisa ran to the barrier separating spectators from competitors. "They're starting to understand," she shouted excitedly. "Humans don't need giant muscles or natural armor. We have something better." The scoreboard updated. Jake ranked second overall, just behind Zornak. The Vectoran's raw power had destroyed more drones, but Jake's efficiency and survival tactics earned high marks from the judges. Round 3 would begin soon. The challenges would escalate. But Jake had proven something crucial to the galaxy. Human warfare wasn't about brute strength. It was about adaptation, creativity, and using every advantage the environment provided. The other competitors now studied him as carefully as he studied them. They had you. The third-round arena transformed into a toxic swamp. Jake materialized knee-deep in purple slime. The air burned his eyes even through his helmet filters. Across the arena, venomous creatures emerged from the muck. Snake-like beings with multiple heads, insectoid hunters with dripping fangs, and acidic plants that reached for anything that moved. Competitors must survive and eliminate ecosystem threats, the announcer stated. Beware. All native life forms are extremely venomous. Medical stations are available at checkpoints. Zornak immediately roared into action, plasma blasting the nearest creatures. His thick scales protected him from some toxins, but not all. A three-headed serpent bit his lower arm. The Victoran howled as purple venom spread through his scales. Jake watched carefully. The venomous creatures had patterns, like the drones. In the jungle, he noticed how certain insects avoided specific plants. Some creatures fled from others. The ecosystem had natural checks and balances. A massive centipede burst from the swamp aiming for Jake. Instead of fighting, he dove underwater. The swamp liquid burned slightly, but through the murky depths he spotted glowing fungi clinging to roots. He remembered earth botany lessons. Some fungi produced antitoxins. Breaking the surface, Jake grabbed handfuls of the fungi and smashed them on himself. The burning sensation decreased. He repeated the process, creating a protective paste. Other competitors who heard watched with fascination as he essentially painted himself with anti-venom. Brilliant, whispered Professor Ken from the viewing box. He's synthesizing immunity using local flora. Jake moved toward the medical station, noting which creatures avoided which plants. He began collecting specimens, stems from acid eating, vines, leaves that insects wouldn't touch, roots that made aggressive serpents retreat. At the medical station, he found empty containers meant for storing collected samples. What is the human doing? Korix demanded, watching the screens. Jake wasn't fighting anymore. He was experimenting. He crushed different plants together, testing combinations on small cuts in his armor. Some mixtures bubbled and failed. Others created protective barriers. He worked like an earth scientist, not a warrior. Lisa pressed against the viewing barrier. He's making medicine, using basic chemistry. When another competitor, a crystalline being named Quartz, arrived at the medical station severely poisoned by spore clouds, Jake offered his crude antidote. Try this paste on the affected areas, he said, handing over a mixture of crushed fungi and vine sap. Quartz hesitated, then applied the paste. The spreading crystalline rot ceased. Their transparent body stopped clouding with toxins. You helped me, Quartz said, surprised. We are competitors. We're soldiers first, Jake replied. Competition shouldn't mean letting allies die. This moment changed everything. Other competitors watching through communication feeds saw a human saving an alien rival. It violated the brutal competition spirit everyone expected. Jake continued exploring the swamp systematically. He mapped which areas were safest, which creatures were territorial versus predatory, which plants were allies versus enemies. He created paths through the swamp that minimized encounters with the most dangerous toxins. When a plasma blast scared a nest of acid-spitting lizards toward the medical station, Jake used the protective paste to create a barrier. The acid ate through standard barriers, but his plant-based mixture neutralized it. He saved several weakened competitors who had retreated there. Time remaining, 5 minutes, the arena announced. Jake had eliminated fewer threats through direct combat than most competitors. But his survival rate was perfect. His toxin resistance was nearly complete. Most importantly, he had demonstrated problem-solving that impressed the judges more than raw violence. As the round ended, Jake stood near the extraction point with several competitors he had helped. Some offered nods of respect. The brutal competition had been overshadowed by practical innovation. Unprecedented, declared Elder Tath during judging. The human showed mercy while maintaining tactical efficiency. He transformed poison into protection. Zornak, who had fought through brute force, ranked higher in elimination count but lower in survival metrics. His arm remained swollen from venom damage. Jake ranked second again, but this time with full marks for innovation. Back in the waiting area, everything had changed. Competitors no longer avoided Jake. They asked questions about his techniques. Even Korix seemed thoughtful rather than dismissive. "Your fighting style lacks honor," Zornak said, but without venom in his voice. "You help enemies." "I help surviving," Jake corrected. In real combat, keeping allies alive matters more than proving strength. The tournament had 3 rounds left. Jake was now in the top tier of competitors, but more importantly, he was changing how the galaxy viewed human potential. Strength wasn't just about muscle or firepower. Sometimes the greatest weapon was understanding how systems worked. The next challenge loomed. Jake prepared himself, knowing that every round would be harder, but he also knew he was no longer fighting alone. He was changing minds, one survival strategy at a time. Round 4 transported competitors to a scorching desert. 2 artificial suns blazed overhead, making the sand shimmer like water. The temperature display read 175 degrees Earth standard. Jake's armor immediately began heating up, but he noticed something that made him smile despite the harsh conditions: sweat. Unlike his competitors, Jake was sweating profusely. The other species worried about their cooling systems, scales cracking, crystal bodies overheating, mechanical parts seizing up, but Jake's skin did exactly what Earth evolution had designed it for: efficient cooling through perspiration. "Survive for 45 minutes in this heat," the announcer stated. "Combat effectiveness will be tested through random attack sequences." The sandy landscape offered few hiding spots. Most competitors sought shade under rocky outcroppings. Zornak's scales had already begun to peel. A Gravorian warrior's stone skin was developing stress fractures. Even Prism, whose body naturally dealt with heat, struggled as their crystal structure threatened to overheat. Jake stripped off his outer armor layers. The direct sun beat down on his skin, but his body responded normally. He had trained in Earth, deserts before. He knew hydration techniques, breathing methods for hot environments, and most importantly, he understood human biological advantages. Attack drones appeared, designed to stress test competitors while they fought heat exhaustion. Most aliens could barely lift their weapons. Combat efficiency dropped rapidly as temperatures soared. Zornak managed only 2 shots before his arms became too heavy. A powerful Krillian collapsed completely, their bone armor conducting heat inward. Jake moved differently. He jogged, light steps that minimized contact with burning sand. His constant sweating kept his core temperature stable. When attack drones approached, he used minimal movements to deflect their attacks. No wasted energy, no excessive heat generation. He noticed a reptilian competitor named Scrix collapsing near a rock face. Most competitors had learned the hard way: helping rivals reduced your own chances. But Jake couldn't ignore someone dying from heatstroke. He dragged Scrix to shade, then remembered his medical training. He cut strips from his undersuit and soaked them with his own sweat. The fabric became cooling patches. He placed them on Scrix's pressure points: neck, wrists, inner elbows. "Why?" Scrix gasped, their scaled skin practically glowing with retained heat. "Because it's the right thing to do," Jake replied simply. From the viewing area, the crowd watched in stunned silence. Lisa Carter stood proud, tears in her eyes. "They're starting to understand humanity," she whispered to the other human spectators. Commander Korix leaned forward. "The human's physiology, it's actually superior in this environment. We've been testing warriors in all the wrong ways." As time progressed, more competitors fell to heat exhaustion. Jake moved between them, offering what help he could. He used his sweat cooling technique on several aliens, essentially turning his biggest supposed weakness, constant sweating, into a life-saving advantage. The attack drones continued their assault. While overheated aliens struggled with each encounter, Jake maintained steady performance. His lightweight, sweaty body actually improved his agility. He dodged attacks that stronger beings couldn't react to fast enough. With 15 minutes remaining, Only 8 of the 20 competitors were still active. Jake had helped 4 others survive who would have otherwise been eliminated. He hadn't scored the highest in combat metrics, but his survival score was perfect, and his compassion score was off the charts. The twin suns finally began to set. The desert temperature dropped quickly. Competitors who had survived through Jake's intervention began recovering. Scrix approached Jake, offering a warrior's salute with 4 clawed fingers to forehead. "I misjudged your species," Scrix admitted. "Earth may be considered primitive, but your compassion makes you advanced." The round ended. The scoreboard showed Jake had maintained second place overall, but the betting pools had shifted dramatically. People were now placing bets on Jake winning outright. More importantly, the cheers from the crowd included alien species who had initially scorned humanity. In the waiting area, Zornak approached Jake. The Vectoran's pride seemed diminished, his scales still healing from heat damage. "You could have won first place," Zornak stated. "You wasted energy helping competitors, you." Round 5 began in a massive steel chamber with walls covered in holographic displays. Unlike previous rounds, this challenge combined mental and physical elements. Floating platforms moved through the air, laser grids shifted patterns, and complex mathematical equations appeared on screens. "The final synthesis," announced the arena. "Solve the tactical puzzle while defending against continuous attacks. Current record, 32 minutes. Begin." Jake studied the chamber quickly. Equation symbols floated above platforms. Connecting. The right solutions would create paths across the room, but attack drones and energy barriers made direct approaches impossible. This test needed perfect timing, precise movement, and complex problem-solving all at once. Zornak charged forward, plasma weapons blazing. He tried to force through with pure strength. The energy barriers adapted, increasing intensity. The yike. Vectoran was pushed back, frustrated. Prism attempted to analyze the light patterns, but their rigid thought process struggled with the constantly changing variables. Jake took a different approach. He remembered his human education, not just military training, but mathematics, physics, engineering, psychology. While other species excelled in specific areas, humans were generalists. They learned many skills moderately well instead of one skill perfectly. He started by mapping movement patterns. The platforms moved in predictable sequences. The laser grids followed mathematical progressions. Energy drones responded to sound frequencies. Jake began humming while he worked, using tone variations to influence drone behavior. A trick he learned from studying Prism's light manipulation techniques. The first equation appeared, quantum physics translated into standard mathematics. Jake solved it quickly. His Earth education included quantum mechanics basics for all soldiers. He leaped to the first platform as laser barriers lowered temporarily. Attack drones swarmed. Instead of fighting, Jake used Zornak's earlier teachings about multi-armed combat. He couldn't grow extra arms, but he could sequence actions rapidly. Dodge, throw, solve, jump. He turned the chamber into a dance of precision movement. Other competitors watched with growing amazement. Jake employed techniques from every species he'd studied: Gregorian strength calculations, Vectoran momentum physics, Prism's light angle mathematics, even Aquarian fluid dynamics for platform transitions. "Astounding," Elder Voss remarked from the viewing box. "The human is synthesizing all knowledge rather than relying on species-specific abilities." Jake solved the second equation: chemical reactions that required understanding multiple alien periodic tables. He'd memorized these during his secret training. Each solved equation revealed new paths, but also triggered harder defenses. Energy beams required split-second timing. Jake used techniques from Earth martial arts, not to fight, but to move. He flowed like water between obstacles, calculating trajectories while defending and solving simultaneously. The third equation involved group theory, mathematics that described symmetry and transformation. Jake smiled. He'd studied this specifically because it applied to understanding alien physiology differences. Each species saw patterns differently. Humans could recognize patterns across multiple perception types. Time: 15 minutes. Jake had solved problems faster than anyone expected, but the defenses escalated. Multiple drone swarms, shifting gravity, fields, dimensional warps that confused spatial awareness. This was where human adaptability shined brightest. When new problems appeared, Jake didn't rely on instinct like his competitors. He analyzed, adapted, and applied knowledge creatively. He used energy beams to propel himself between platforms, turning attacks into transportation. The fourth equation needed parallel processing, solving multiple problems simultaneously. Most brains structured for linear thinking struggled. But humans, with their complex neural networks and practice at multitasking, handled this naturally. Jake juggled equations while controlling drone movements through sonic frequency. 20 minutes, the timer announced. Competitor Sullivan approaches the record. The crowd buzzed with excitement. No one expected a human to challenge the centuries-old record. Zornak watched intently, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine respect. The final puzzle appeared. A complex integration of everything: physics, chemistry, biology, and tactical reasoning combined. Jake's heart raced, but his mind stayed calm. This wasn't just about solving equations anymore. It was about seeing the whole picture. He noticed something other competitors missed. The final solution wasn't mathematical. It was philosophical. The equation asked, what makes strength? The answer wasn't a number. It was understanding that all strengths working together created something greater. Jake input his answer using combat moves that traced symbols in the air. Cooperation. The chamber's defenses deactivated. The final platform lowered. Jake stepped onto solid ground. Time: 23 minutes, 48 seconds. A new record. And not just by a little. He had shattered the previous mark by over 8 minutes. The arena fell silent. Then erupted in cheers from thousands of throats across countless species. Jake had done the impossible. He hadn't just won as the underdog. He had redefined what was possible. In the waiting area, competitors gathered around Jake with genuine admiration. Even Corax approached, his reptilian features showing something like pride. You didn't just win, Corax said. You showed us what we were missing: speed, strength, armor. These matter less than adaptability and wisdom. The tournament wasn't over. One final ceremony remained. But Jake had already achieved more than victory. He had changed how the galaxy saw humanity, and how humanity saw itself among the stars. The tournament ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Military Academy. Jake stood on the winner's platform, surrounded by beings who had once mocked him. The atmosphere had changed completely. Respect had replaced ridicule. Understanding had overpowered xenophobia. Admiral Voss, an ancient being whose species evolved before many others discovered space travel, placed the tournament champion medallion around Jake's neck. The metal shimmered with light from 1,000 different stars. Your victory speech, Champion Sullivan, the Admiral announced. Jake stepped forward to the speaking platform. Thousands of beings waited to hear what the human would say. Behind them, video screens broadcast his image across the galaxy. Earth's first impression among the stars would be shaped by his words. I want to thank everyone who competed against me, Jake began. Zornak, Prism, Quartz, Scrix, and all the others. You are incredible warriors. This week, I learned from each of you. Without your strength, your techniques, and your knowledge, I could never have succeeded. The Victoran competitor nodded respectfully. The other aliens exchanged surprised glances. Winners rarely thanked their opponents. This tournament showed me something important, Jake continued. We spend too much time thinking about what separates us. Which species is strongest? Which is smartest? Which has the best weapons? These questions make us enemies when we could be allies. Commander Corax listened from the officers' section. His earlier prejudice now seemed embarrassing. How had he missed humans' potential for so long? I learned your fighting styles, Jake explained. Zornak taught me about momentum and multiple simultaneous attacks. Prism showed me how light can be both weapon and shield. The Gravorians demonstrated how understanding pressure points matters more than raw strength. Every species contributed something valuable. Lisa Carter stood in the audience, tears of joy streaming down her face. She had known Jake was special, but watching him unite different species through respect overwhelmed her. Today I ask for something bigger than tournament victory. Jake's voice strengthened. I ask that we train together, learn from each other. The threats we face in the galaxy are bigger than any single species can handle alone. Our strength isn't in our bodies or our technology. Our real strength is in our diversity working together. Admiral Voss leaned forward. This human was proposing something radical, integrated training units combining multiple species. Humans bring adaptability, Vectorans bring power, crystalline beings bring precision, stone warriors bring durability, liquid beings bring flexibility, energy forms bring perception. When we combine these abilities, we become unstoppable. The hall buzzed with discussion. Such cooperation had never been attempted. Species-specific training was tradition. Mixing was considered weakness. I challenge every military academy in the galaxy, Jake proclaimed. Open your doors to exchange programs. Train your cadets alongside other species. Learn each other's strengths. Cover each other's weaknesses. Stop preparing to fight alone and start preparing to fight together. Silence fell. Then, slowly, applause began. It started with Lisa, then spread to other human observers. Zornak joined, his forearms creating a rhythmic pattern. Prism's crystalline body chimed like bells. Soon the entire hall resonated with approval. Admiral Voss stood. Your proposal has merit, Champion Sullivan. The Galactic Fleet's High Command will consider establishing the first integrated training unit. Jake descended from the platform. Competitors who once mocked him now surrounded him with genuine camaraderie. Zornak clasped Jake's arm in a warrior's greeting. You defeated us without making us enemies, the Vectoran admitted. This is the mark of a true leader. Commander Korix pushed through the crowd. Sullivan, I owe you an apology. I was blind.